Hello everyone, and welcome to the first of what I hope will be a series of videos on draconity, spiritualism, and of course the otherkin phenomenon in general. In the spirit of saying you were warned though, please go watch a disclaimer video if you haven't already. It's short, I promise. In the meantime, once you've returned, I suppose we'll get down to business. Spiritualism means many different things to many different people in this world, and in essence so does reality. Okay, so reality itself may not vary all that much, but our perception of it does. What we see and what we choose to believe when we see it factor together to give us an interpretation of how things like to work. All the same, I guess my own interpretation is a little more unusual than average. Anyways, you see, I consider myself a draconic. In other words, for those not up to the lingo, it means dragon-like. Now what does that mean? Well, the short answer is that it means I associate myself with dragons on a spiritual level, though the long answer is a little more complex, of course. First off, this is not a physical phenomenon. No matter how I zoom in the camera, you're not going to see slitted eyes nor glittery scales hiding in any unmentionable places. I'm not any stronger or faster than any ordinary person. In fact, probably a little less than average in those departments. And I'm definitely not any more capable. The draconic images occur on a spiritual level, in the way my personal energy feels, the visualizations I use, my instincts and predispositions when it comes to energy working itself, and of course the appearance of my soul as I experience it. Now when I channel energy, I get sensations of scales and talons, a muzzle, a different stance, and of course the sensations of wings and a tail, all of which I've developed since my awakening several years ago, which is a tale of its own that will be told some other time. When I awakened, it was a bit of a shock, but it also spurred on a great deal of self-exploration as I tried to unravel what it meant. So I spent considerable time focused on discovering the fine details of the self-image, and then again when I went through a second change a couple years later. As a result, I can describe this image in a fair amount of detail. No, I should say the individual details themselves aren't terribly important. Not now, anyways. But back then it was a way to explore my experiences and to come to grips with them, and now it's just a method of visualization to bring my energy to bear. As they say, visualization is the key to the occult. Now the first time I awakened, which was in 2001 for those of you wondering, I saw in myself an erect standing humanoid shape. Now most artists call that anthro. And this shape was covered with shining silver scales. I stood on the pads of my feet the way a feline does, again termed digigrade for the technically minded people out there, and I had a long, smoothly tapered tail. My wings were logically proportional, spanning roughly twice my height and being thoroughly draconic in appearance. My head had a draconic shape as well, with relatively plain muzzle, brown eyes, ear frills, and of course, for some reason, hair. I don't know why. Anyways, I saw, and of course I still see myself as following a path of a spiritual warrior, which was fueled by several experiences in my life, also to be described at a later time. In 2003, I went through a sort of a second awakening as I continued my spiritual journey. The changes were few, but seem important somehow. They definitely stood out for me. I doubt most would call the color any different, but I changed from silver to what I can only call white gold, kind of like the metal used in jewelry. It looks silver, but when light reflects from it, it has a slightly gold tint to it. Now before anyone goes all technical on me here, I know that the jeweler's metal white gold is actually a combination of silver and platinum, and has no gold tint whatsoever. It's just the best wording that I was able to find at the time, and it sort of stuck. It's certainly a lot easier than saying, it's the gold that's so light as to appear silver, except in places where the light reflects off because the highlights are a slightly yellow tint. But moving on. My tail got longer, again as I surmised the length using proportion and feelings in my own height as a gauge, and my wings went through a sort of metamorphosis. This was actually the largest change that I felt. They still had the same dragon-like bone structure, you know, the bat ribs that typically extend as a framework for the wing membrane. However, that membrane itself was replaced by very large, soft feathers that extended well beyond the draconic framework. Huge, fluffy, you know, as if they were all down or had very soft or outright missing quills. Their color also changed to a rich gold. Again, I have no idea why, at least not without trying to be arrogant, which I don't like. I also discovered that I seem to have an affinity with electricity and have a tendency to visualize energy as such when channeling, especially on occasions involving aggression or dangerous situations, as dangerous as these things happen on a spiritual level. Of course, all this is rife with symbols, which I've been able to recognize as aspects of myself in one way or another, including things I need to work on as avenues of personal growth. For example, wings generally represent enlightenment and a desire to be free of your burdens, whatever they may be. Of course, on the opposite track, if you go too far, they can have connotations of a desire to run from one's problems or to seem larger, metaphors abound, I'm sure, than you really are. I'm going to set the symbolisms aside for now, however. After all, the symbols and interpretation are a secondary tool to the realization that it goes deeper for otherkin. To us, all of this imagery and sensation boils down to a single idea, that on a soul level, this image isn't really some picture with a bunch of fluffy interpretations attached to it. This image and everything that comes along with it is who I am, in mind, in soul, even if it isn't in body. But, well, now that I've gotten you all introduced, that's everything for now. Stay tuned for part 2 when I try to salvage the appearance of my sanity. Somehow I doubt that'll happen, but hey, it's worth a try, right?